Welcome to this 10-minute Expert Insight video podcast produced by EMEA. I'm Charlie Ashton with 21K Consulting. And in this series of podcasts, we're talking to industry experts about trends and challenges in IoT, SD-WAN, edge compute, and network virtualization. Today, I'm delighted to welcome Joel Stradling, founder and lead analyst at Clavem Research. So Joel, before we start talking about the main topics for this podcast, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and about Clavem Research?
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much, Charlie. So I'm an industry analyst. I have about 20 years of experience looking at enterprise networks and IT with a specific specialization in wide area network services. So clearly over the past few years, along with the evolution of that segment, that's included a lot of focus on software-defined wide area networking or SD-WAN, which is what we'll talk a bit around today. And last year, I founded and set up Clavem Research, and we're a relatively small industry analyst business set up by some industry analyst veteran colleagues of mine based in Europe. So I'm in Spain, and we have analysts in the Netherlands and also in Norway. And we provide, market analysis and insight around how SDN and NFV is driving digital transformation across various vertical industry sectors.
Well, that's great. And thanks again for making some time to have a chat. So you recently blogged about the new integration between Cisco's SD-WAN Cloud Hub and Google Cloud. Can you explain what that partnership is all about and maybe describe one or two use cases?
Yeah, sure. So Cisco and Google decided to create this collaboration, and I think they both recognized the need to bridge a gap that exists between wide area networks, so where the enterprise have local sites, and their cloud platforms. Mm-hmm. So SD-WAN is a very powerful and compelling technology. However, there's a lot of marketing hype out there, and enterprises have found that in some cases it can add complexity. It's not really a quick and simple fix, just deploying an SD-WAN and hoping that all of your apps that are running across hybrid cloud platforms are all going to function and perform very well. And so, with Cisco and Google having the market presence, existing market traction, especially in Cisco's case with wide area network infrastructure, and you sort of combine that with the Google Cloud platforms and all the applications that Google is building and developing for enterprises, then you have a very interesting combination that helps sort of address that gap between WAN and cloud.
Yeah. Thanks for clarifying that. So what do you see as some of the attributes of SD-WAN that enterprises can harness to solve challenges in areas like industrial IoT and just more broadly digital transformation?
Yeah, so I think, in the beginning, what SD-WAN meant for a lot of enterprises was a way to cope with rising costs for dedicated access. So I'm talking about MPLS. So, in order to solve various digital transformation objectives, companies found they needed to add bandwidth, and adding private dedicated bandwidth in every instance can be quite costly. So SD-WAN became an effective way to manage different types of accesses. So you could use perhaps public internet or broadband or 4G or different types of access instead of just buying MPLS all the time. However, having said that, it has moved on. I think companies are starting to appreciate the agility they get, being able to take advantage of more automation, and being able to centrally control and orchestrate through a single dashboard the entire, wide area network estate via software-defined tools.
Okay. So why do we need edge compute in these scenarios, and what's the relationship between edge compute and SD-WAN?
Well, I think we are seeing new applications develop that can be latency sensitive. And in the previous question, you mentioned the IoT, and how SD-WAN, industrial IoT, how SD-WAN can help support development there. So what we're seeing with let's say pretty massive number of endpoints, sensors in the field, in factories and so on, that are part of the IoT network, and they're all providing data into that network. And as we move towards 5G, where you're going to have 1,000 times more bandwidth available at corporate sites, for example, latency becomes an issue. And that's where edge compute comes into its own. If you can push out some of those resources for processing, storage, and computational power out to edge, and therefore closer to the customer premise, you achieve this low latency, maybe you could call it nirvana, that will help those applications, function. They could be mission critical, very time sensitive, could be predictive maintenance or robotics, or even man down, situations for worker safety in mining applications and things like that. So, edge compute is a way that helps solve what potentially could be some latency issues that would make those solutions not very robust.
Okay, that makes sense. So what are the opportunities for white box platforms within SD-WAN?
Well, I think there's a question here about scale and vendor lockdown. A lot of vendors, understandably, will promote their own agenda because they would like to buy their solution and buy all the parts of their solution. Mm-hmm. However, that's not necessarily good for the industry, for the enterprises that want to adopt. One, in terms of they can't really swap out equipment very, very easily. Two, a lock-in means that, they can't switch vendors and try different solutions very flexibly. And so overall, it becomes a little bit rigid. And the way we're moving with more automation, that self-serve and, centrally orchestrated changes that enterprises can make, along with that technical agility, you should have some commercial agility. And so I think white box technology will run on open source software and will be compatible with many other moving parts, in the ecosystem of those complicated network solutions. And it will lower cost. So enterprises will be able to buy, quite generic pieces of, basically it's tin, and they can become very powerful because you can spin up virtualized network functions on top of those white box devices in a very cost-effective manner. So I think it's quite important for the industry to move ahead with standardized white box technology, with open source platforms, code, and coordination amongst independent software vendors and so on, to push the industry ahead so they can harness and take advantage of some of the things coming, like 5G, artificial intelligence, and so on.
Yeah, that makes sense. So what's your view on the trade-offs that enterprises should be considering as they choose between an SD-WAN that's hosted on a universal CPE platform rather than a vertically integrated solution?
Yeah, I think once it's hosted on a white box solution, you have the opportunity to try out different virtualized network functions. Mm-hmm. We've seen, in terms of VNFs, the initial popular ones have been WAN optimization and firewalls. But I think we're going to start seeing more specialized applications come in, including things required to support the 5G ecosystem. And I'm talking about Open RAN specifically. But there are many others not limited to that, where more virtualized network functions will become available. So enterprises will be able to shop from a library. And it would be very helpful for them to be able to mix and match and try some out for a while and be able to change between vendors until they can put together the best solution they have. And I think that proprietary customer premise equipment from SD-WAN platform or solution developers might not be so open to supporting all those different platforms, because again, they'd like to sell as much of their own solution as possible. So I think that's how UCPE will help.
Great. Well, thanks very much, Joel, for those fascinating observations. So for more insights from Joel and the rest of the Clavem Research team, please do take a look at their website. There's lots of very interesting information there. And thanks for watching this podcast. And please look out for more of these 10-minute expert insights brought to you by EMEA. Thank you.